Hey everyone, and welcome back to our Apollo video series. In our last video, we looked at piece types and how to display them using dedicated piece pages. But one of the most powerful aspects of pieces is they don't have to live only on those dedicated pages. They're standalone documents you can display anywhere. Today, we're going to explore 3 different approaches for using pieces throughout your site. First, we're going to look at the built-in API endpoints that ApostropheCMS delivers for every single piece. Second, we're going to talk quickly about creating custom API routes for those pieces. And third, we're going to talk about leveraging relationship fields in order to display the pieces. Each approach has its strength and is suited for different scenarios. Let's dive in and see how you can make your piece content more flexible and reusable. For these examples, there isn't actually code within the Apollo project. We're going to go ahead and look at some extra files that I've gone ahead and added on. If you want to follow this more closely, if you want these code examples, you can navigate over to the written part of this tutorial and copy the code from there. In this case, we're just going to walk through the code in our respective front and back ends of the Apollo project. So the simplest way to pull pieces into any part of your site is by using ApostropheCMS's built-in REST API. Every piece type automatically gets an API endpoint without any extra coding. So let's look at an example for fetching news articles through a component. So in this case, we're going to go into our code. We're going to go into our Apollo repo and open up the Astro front end part of the project. I've already got it open, as you can see here, but we're going to navigate to our source folder where most of our code is. And in this case, I've made this hypothetical way to fetch these news articles into a component. So then this component could then be imported and used on any page or in a widget. So opening that code up, we can walk through and see what's going on. So right here at the top, we're constructing an API URL to fetch the articles. So by default, all of our piece type material, all of our piece types are going to be available at the API endpoint /API/v1/ and then the type of piece it is. So in this case, an article. So API v1 article, we're creating a new URL using the Astro URL origin helper to get that originating URL. To that, we're adding some different parameters. So we're adding a category of news so that we are pulling out only articles that are news category. We're setting our publication date so that the returned object of or array of articles is going to be sorted with publication date set to -1. So that way we're getting the most recent article first. And we're saying we only want to get back 5 articles. So this is all getting passed in through a URL. And so you can see, obviously, here we're doing it programmatically inside of this component, but you could just directly pass this URL to an apostrophe backend in order to get an article or a set of articles back. Then next, we're doing a standard response, a standard fetch, and then getting back the response. So getting back the results. And then down here in this template, all we're doing is we're taking the response that we got back, those results, and we're parsing through those with a map or looping through those with a map, just saying that we want to output the title, the excerpt, and a URL. In this case, this URL is going to go, since we have an article-page module with a show.html template that we've instituted, we showed that in our last video, we can provide a link to the individual show template in order to look at the details for that article. So that's a really quick, easy way to fetch articles to then display anywhere on our site. So then we could just import this component, the news article component, into, say, our default page and be able to output those articles right onto the page. Okay, so the one thing that I do need to point out is if you use this method of retrieving the article things, you're also going to have to give Astro permission to fetch these and display these. So in order to do that, we're going to go into our backend, into our modules, and go into the actual article piece type. So that is here. And here within the piece type options, we're going to have to add something a little extra. So in addition to the shortcut, we're going to go ahead and add something called a public API projection. And that takes an object. So the public API projection, what that option is telling Apostrophe is that we want to allow the public to be able to get certain aspects of or certain schema fields from our articles, from our article piece type. And so we're going to tell it we want the title, and we're just going to pass a 1. So these projections take either a 1 or a 0. So permit or prevent. Whoops, we're outside of our object here. Let's try that again. So we're going to do the title. We're going to do an excerpt. So the autocorrect there you saw suggested slug. That's not what we're going to need since we don't have a built-in way to show these articles, right? We only have that within the article page module. But we're going to pass the excerpt since we're showing that on in our component. We're going to pass the URL. Again, that's going to be the computed URL. So it's got an underscore at the beginning. And that's going to go to our show page that we have set up in our article-page module. And then finally, we need to sort these. So we also need the category. So we have the category. So what this is going to do, again, is give us permission without having to pass back an API key or create a bearer token or something like that. We're going to create a public API projection that allows us to allows anybody to access these particular schema fields from the article piece type document. Okay, let's switch over into our Apollo project and take a quick look at this. For the sake of time, I actually use this component on a sample page, just a throw off page, and I've added one to the project. So if we look under pages here, right down here, tut content, I added this. Just take a quick look. So I created a new page type for this that I added the component to. If we take a look now at what this looks like, you can see that our top 5 news articles are output onto the page. So we've got our markup with the latest news, the title, the excerpt, and a read more button for each of our 5 news items. Okay, so that's the first way. You create or you utilize the built-in API endpoints. The second way is to, and so this particular, the beauty of this approach is its simplicity. The query parameters correspond directly, basically, to MongoDB query syntax. So you can get very powerful filtering capabilities with no additional back-end code. So this is perfect for use cases like latest news sidebars or featured content sections, category-specific listings as we've shown here, things like that. So the second approach is to use a custom API route. Inside here in the article page, we can actually create a custom route. And so this is used when you need more complex logic to transform the piece data, to both fetch and transform the piece data before it gets sent back to the request, to the requester, to the component, or wherever we're requesting that. So if you take a look down here, I've modified the back-end article index.js file to include a custom API route. We can do this in a couple of different ways through some different configuration methods within ApostropheCMS modules, but in this case, I'm using API routes. So that's right here. You can see that is at the same top level as our options and our fields. So we have this API routes, and within the API routes object, we're going to return different routes. And basically, you're going to want to create an additional property that takes an object for each HTTP verb. So in this case, get. we're getting. If you wanted to, you could have a post route where you could then access this API route to add additional articles. You could do a patch route, things like that. So let's open this up. So you can see within the get object here, within the get property object, we have a single method that we're passing, latest by author. That's going to create this particular route that can then be accessed through the URL. So let's just take a look at what that does and how it's different than the more simple built-in API route we just looked at. Here, we're saying that we want to do a find on the author module. So in this case, we're in the article module, but we want to find a document that's part of the author module. So we're passing that in using self.apos.modules.author, the piece type module name. And we're saying find find those documents and then return them as an array. So if there is none, then we return just an empty array. Otherwise, if we are able to get those, we can then do some manipulation. So here we're just saying for the latest articles, we want to basically map all of our articles that are part of those author pieces, so that we can return what the latest article is when we search by an author. And you can walk through the logic of this on your own. But basically what we're doing is we're just using our authors, using the relationship between the reverse relationship between the author and the articles that they've created in order to find all of those particular documents. And again, we're sorting them. So we're passing using dot notation here. We're sorting them by latest. And we're saying we only need the title. We don't want to pass in a ton of different data. So we're using a query builder here of project. And you can read a lot more about these in the Apostrophe documentation. So I direct you to the written tutorial where it provides links. We're limiting this to just returning a single document. And again, we want an array. So once that returns, we're making sure that we actually have articles. If we do, we're going to go ahead and return an array that contains, or an object, excuse me, not an array, an object that contains three different properties: the author's name through author.title schema field, the title of the article, of the first article, and in this case, we're just putting in kind of an artificial little purchase link here. So in this case, I'm just doing a quick search on Amazon using the article title, and this will just do a search on Amazon for that particular title and create when the person clicks the link that we are going to output onto the page, and then so that's going to be returning that, and then. If we look at now how that is being used, if we go back over into our Astro project and we take a look at the default page, I've made some alterations there. Oops, source, we want to close down components and open up templates. Excuse me, no, I created a new page. I apologize. I created the content page that utilizes this new API route. Let's take a look at that. And so you can see that here. So one thing that you should notice is here we're hitting the API v1 article again because we're creating the route within the article module, and we're using latest dash by dash author. So we're using kebab case instead of, if you remember, looking back into the back end. Is it still open here? Yeah. If you remember looking back here, when we created the API route, we actually created it using camel case, latest by author. That's going to automatically be converted for us by ApostropheCMS to kebab case, so that we can hit that URL. And from here on, it's pretty much the same as what we did with the built-in API routes. We're hitting the API at that particular URL constructed based on the Astro URL.origin, and waiting for the response back from our fetch, converting that to JSON, and then outputting that onto our page if it exists. So again, it's a simple way now to go ahead and grab a particular article. In this case, we're basing it off of what author we want that from. And so we could have a whole list of authors and output one of these for each of the different, the latest article for each of the different authors. Okay, so let's switch over to the browser, take a quick look at that once again. In the interest of time, what I've done is I've modified the top content page once again, this time getting rid of our component that loaded in the latest news articles, and I'm just having it show the latest articles by our author. So it's going through all the authors within our database and outputting their latest article. So just switching over here, we're already on the top content page, and you can see it loaded in that we've got the latest articles by our authors. We've got the author's name, the title of the article. Probably would be a good idea to actually make that into a link so you could get to that article. And then this buy on Amazon. That here it's obviously not going to bring up anything because this isn't a title in the Amazon library. Okay, so that's the second method, to use a custom API. So these are perfect when you need some sort of complex business logic, again, where you need to transform or maybe get data that's not contained within that individual piece document that you could return through the built-in API request. So it allows for data transformation. It's great for combining multiple pieces, so an author piece and an article piece in this case, and can give back a custom response format. Okay, so let's talk about our third way that we can get piece content to our front end. And our third approach leverages ApostropheCMS's relationship fields, which we talked about already. But we can use those to connect pieces to your pages or widgets. So this is ideal when you want the editors to the content managers to take direct control over which pieces appear. So say that we want to feature a specific article on our default page. So the first thing we're going to need to do is add a relationship field to the default page type. So going back into our back end, going up here to the default page and opening the index.js. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is add a relationship schema field into our fields. So we can do that right here at within the add object after our main schema field. So just go ahead and create a new one. Again, this is going to be a relationship, so it's got to start with an underscore. So we can use something like featured articles for the schema field name. And then, yeah, this has it filled out pretty well. So we're going to be a type of relationship. We can give it whatever label we want to. And then we want to make sure that it's designating that our with type is article. So remember, we're working with a project level module, the article module. So we do not need to prefix it with @ApostropheCMS/ like we would for an image piece type. Instead, we're just saying plain straight out, this is at our project level article. We're going to ask for 3. And in this case, this is coming up with my autocorrect as required true. You don't have to have that field. You can say leave the required field off, and then it won't be required for every single default page. And then the only other thing that I want to point out here is we do want to limit the amount of data coming back. So we're going to add a builder to this. And builders for schema fields take an object of what fields you want to return, what builders you want to add. We're going to add a projection. And we're going to say that within that projection, we only want to return the title. Whoops. The excerpt and the URL. And the autocomplete is completely correct here. Let's just move our cursor to get rid of the rest of the autocorrect. Delete that. The autocorrect is completely correct here in that the URL is the computed URL. So it's got to be prefaced with an underscore. So again, this is as long as we have an article page show template, we can reference this underscore URL, this computed URL, to pass a link back to a particular article. So the projection builder is just a way that we can make sure if we have a really large number of requests that we're not passing a ton of unneeded data and consuming bandwidth, slowing down our page response time. Okay, so this is going to create a relationship field where editors can deliberately select up to 3 articles to feature. And so now we can use these same this relationship field and these relationship with these articles within our page template. So going back to the front end, close this down, go into the front end, we can look at our default page and we can say, okay, so after our main page content, we want to go ahead and have our featured articles. So the one thing that we do have to do is we have to bring that new relationship field into our template. So we can do that right here, I guess, after this. So right now, what we're doing is we're deconstructing the main schema area field from the page data that we've already brought in. So we can just do another one. Featured articles. And then say this is going to be equal to the featured articles page, schema field that is on that page. So now we have that. Now we have to make use of that. So we can create a new section down here. Oops. Let's see how this did. I just accepted this without paying much attention. Yeah, okay. I might go ahead and wrap this in some other things like an article instead of a list item to give it some more semantics. I guess we could do that right now. We could say instead, we could say article. We could potentially give that a some sort of class to give it some styling, something like that. Change this out. And then within this, we're just going ahead and mapping through all of the articles that have been delivered back. Actually, you know what? I'm going to get rid of this instead of a list. So we're going to want to, yeah, this looks better. So we're going to create an article div within this. Within that, we're going to output for each article. We're going to output the title and the excerpt. We don't really need this data attribute up here. We can get rid of that. So we're going to create a div. Let's close out that div. And output the title, the excerpt, and we should also output the URL within that. So again, this is going to give us a link over to the show page for displaying that. So for each article, basically we're just going to loop through. We're going to loop through our returned array of articles. And for each one, we're going to output the title, the excerpt, and a read more button. So in this way, we can put those 3 articles quickly onto our default page. They'll show up below whatever content the author or the content editor decides to put onto that page. And again, have to be selected by that content editor to be displayed. Okay, jumping back over into our browser and our Apollo project, just really quickly, we'll take a look at adding a new default page. So up to pages, new page, we've got default. Let's just give this, I don't know, for relationship. I actually didn't add this to a group like I should have. So in this tab, that new relationship field is going to be in this ungrouped tab. Excuse me. We can see our featured articles are here. Going to browse the articles, and we'll just pick the last 3 here. You could rearrange them if you wanted to, something like that. So we're going to go ahead and select, and we're going to save the draft and preview. And you can see now all 3 of those featured articles are output onto our default page. So we've got establishing content, cataloging lunar samples, and updating content. So in this way, your editor can select what articles they want to be shown on each particular default page. So this relationship approach is perfect for editorially curated content in things like featured or related sections. It's good for cross-promoting content if you have one article and want to do something like, oh, do you also want to read about, some other topic? And they're good for complex content relationships. And so that's it. That's the 3 main approaches for getting piece materials onto a page outside of a dedicated piece type page. So for the built-in API endpoints, to summarize, the strengths are that they're simple. You don't need any extra backend code, and there's powerful features right out of the box. And they're great for dynamic content selections. The custom API routes, the strengths there are you have full control with complex logic and data transformation. And they're great for things like author dashboards or custom analytics, specialized content formats. And then finally, we have the relationships. And again, strength here is much like the built-in API endpoints. This is simple, but you do need to have direct editorial control. You're asking the content editor to directly decide what articles, what piece types should be on that page through a direct UI for selection. And so this is good for curated content and manual selections. Okay, so just to wrap up, each approach gives you different tools for creating rich, interconnected content experiences that go beyond just the traditional page navigation. And by combining these techniques, you can build truly dynamic sites where content is going to flow freely between different contexts, which is what makes ApostropheCMS and Astro such a powerful combination. So with that, thanks for watching. That wraps up our tutorial series for now. Happy building.